Hello everyone, I'm Dawid. Thank you for coming, it's nice to have you here. Today I'm gonna tell you some stories, I hope interesting ones, about Sound of Shadow Warrior 3 and our adventures. So I will start with telling you what Shadow Warrior 3 is, then I'll go to introducing our amazing core audio team. And then I will start with the meaty part. I will tell you something about our audio direction and about our idea what audio direction is. Then I will go to some game audio classics. I will tell you something about Pareto Principle and tell you what it is, and I will tell you later something about, as a summary, about my thoughts on what game audio is in the context of the whole game development. And there will be some time for Q&A. So, what is Shadow Warrior 3? It's a game about this guy. And in short, it's FPS. Fast-paced one, narrative-driven, lots of dialogue, lots of shooting. You fight demons using cool weapons, magic environment, and you traverse very rich and varied world. Tech-wise, we used Unreal 4 coupled with middleware called Fmod Studio. And who did it? It was, well, me, something about me. I started working on game audio about 10 years ago. Currently, I work at Wild Hog as a senior sound designer. And at first, I started with music and sound, and at some point, I fell in love with sound, which is great. Here are some games I worked on. And coming back to the rest of the team, it's me. It's Michał Jankowski, another sound designer, and that's it for sound designers. We got some help from amazing composer, Maciej Kulesza, who hopefully is here. Or maybe not. Yeah. Claudia Sordil, our producer, who helped us with her production magic. And we got also help from audio programmers, Marek Gałach and Alexander Kozlov, who did the heavy lifting, tech-wise. And here are some first lessons learned. What worked well? Our skill sets, me and Michał, complemented each other, so we were able to work on completely separate parts of the game and put our skills and varied experiences to the best effect, I hope. And yeah, I focus mostly on player-related stuff, and most of enemies, some tech. And Michał worked on enviro, cutscenes, and dialogue. And yeah, we're in general quite experienced, and this was good. What didn't work? We got too small amount of sound designers, which was bad. And working hard on games you care about is in too small team is great way to hurt yourself. It's worth remembering, and we take lessons from that. And because of that, some things had to be simplified in order to, ship the game. And according to my personal experience, and after some talks with my other game audio folks, I personally use a rough estimate that one sound designer can support work of 20 to 30 dev team members. When it gets more, it of course depends on the type of the game, but when it gets more, some things can suffer. For example, the sound designer can suffer, or the quality can suffer. And in general, our main problem for the whole thing was too much optimism. And solution for future game is pessimism. Yeah. We're gonna use help from Arthur Schopenhauer, who was great German philosopher who dedicated his whole life to fight optimism and Hegel, but that's another story. And he'll be back. So, audio direction. Why we do something? And why do I even talk about it? Let's see. For most of the time, game audio folks talk about technical stuff. So this is one of our problems. What's the best DAW for game audio? This is our problem. This is our problem. And please don't get me wrong, it's all very, very important. But that's not the whole thing. And where it gets really interesting is here, when artsy stuff meets tech stuff. And this is fun. Just look at the picture. And this is where I believe, personally, real creativity starts. And this will be the focus of my presentation today. And our audio goals, what were they? First audio goal was storytelling, and our means were delivering feeling of power, adventure, varied mood, space, jokes here and there. At the end of the day, dialogue also usually had the priority, so it was able to deck everything. But that's it for our real audio goals. It was just storytelling. And you can redo that with sound, not only dialogue. And we have video example. I think it's on the funny side here. Okay. It's this one. I'm not sure if there's a sound coming. Do you hear anything? Okay. Oh, maybe it was another movie, sorry. Yeah, shitty horn, sorry. Yeah, it's one of our audio jokes that also helped. Sorry. That also helped with gameplay stuff. So whenever you see a bunch of these guys flying on balloons, you also hear the sound. And it's funny, it's informative. One of the cool things I wanted to show you. Yeah, they use their shitty horn. Why it's so shitty? It's actual game name. And it has been done by another second sound designer, Mika. He actually blew. He did this sound by blowing air into toilet paper roll. So this is it, shitty horn from Kugutsu. And audio style summary. It's quite a useful thing. We developed these short sentences in order to help ourselves to stay on the aesthetic track of the things and to smoothen out communication with the rest of the teams. So, in short, it's hunt for grotesque Asian demons presented from perspective of a super skilled retired ninja who is such a pop culture nerd that it alters his perception of reality. And very short, brutal yet colorful sound for a brutal yet colorful world. And of course it was made up on the fly. We didn't have it when we left pre-production, but it helped anyway. And components of our audio design doc, Audio Bible, which is this huge document that you store your information. For a bunch of reasons, was like this. We developed some audio pillars, which were like some main assumptions about about the audio of the whole game. we gathered a bunch of references, structures. So whenever one of us was starting working on sounds for a new demon monster, we knew that we need some sounds for him being hurt, for some attacks, for death, for being brought to us with grappling hook, and etc., etc. We also got this for environmental stuff, for weapons, so we basically got a nice structure to begin with. We also got naming convention stored in there, and macro overview of the whole thing, where we are able to see what's going on here and there, and yeah, some other documentation, planning stuff. It was pretty useful. And we started early on with this document, and it was very, very useful. In previous games, I failed with that, and it was lesson learned. We put that in motion, and it was good. Useful tip: background stories for key elements. So whenever something big was needing for sound, we sometimes, together with our usually art team, we developed this kind of short story about something. So in this case, it's about Basilisk weapon, which is huge, sophisticated, and elegant tool of mass destruction that wants to eat some poor yokai alive. This thing looks like it was found in an ancient tomb created by the master of long-forgotten craft. Sound should do justice to this story, and at the same moment give it a proper kick and impression of tearing apart the reality around it. So we took this kind of stories, we brought it to our creative director, to some other team members involved in creation of the thing. It was so much easier to communicate. They knew what to expect, and it also helped us during iteration process. Yep. Yeah, we use this approach for weapons, monsters, environmental sounds. We do example Basilisk in game. So yeah, this is this weapon that I spoke about. Sounds better in game. Lessons learned here and what worked well. Focus on artsy stuff. It really helped, and I will speak about the reasons for that a little later. But in general, we knew what to do. The communication with the rest of the dev team was much, much smoother. And also nice thing was the fact that hardcore stuff, tech stuff, was handled by audio programmers. It's a luxury to have audio programmers, and if you see any chance to get one, just get him. What didn't work? Communication in pandemic. It was really hard. We started before pandemic. Shortly after leaving pre-production stage, we entered pandemic. We were sent home, and the communication at the very beginning was so much harder. And in these dark ages, we delivered a demo for E3, which was hard to finish, and it would be so much easier doing it in the office. And another thing that didn't work well was the audio Bible was incomplete at the end of pre-production. So my opinion is good to have as much info stored there as possible. Yeah, Schopenhauer he's not happy with us. Too much optimism this time. Time for game audio classics, which are some of the classic game audio problems that every one of us working on game audio encounters here and there. There are numerous questions there, but I'm going to focus on things that we thought were the most important ones. So, tech, how versus aesthetics, what? And I believe it's interconnected, and it's one of the most beautiful things about our line of work. And it works like this. It's, yeah, my favorite movie I never watched. And technical stuff is discussed much more frequently. Whenever you go to some online forums or whenever you go to meetup of game audio folks, they usually gonna be talking about technical stuff, not artsy stuff. I think it's just easier, and that's it. So I think it's worth to speak about other things. And I firmly believe it can cripple our creativity. For some games, this might be perfectly fine, but not for something like Shadow Warrior 3, where we really wanted to follow with the rest of the game, which was very art-driven. And another game audio classic problem, I believe, is scope. And what does it mean? Whenever you go to any tutorial or anything like that, you see that it encourages you to go crazy about scope, to invent crazy amount of new tech, to complicate everything infinitely. But guess what? Yep, I've seen it many times, and it may seem smart, but raising the scope, especially when you don't really need that, is very dangerous. And it makes everything harder. And yeah, I believe in smart and selective raising of the scope. And I will tell you something more about it later. And I think that interesting example here is our data-driven Foley system for enemies, which basically is related to Foley sound of the enemies. In general, in our case, it was related to the fact that most of our enemies got some kind of jewelry on them, some kind of clothes, lots of things was going on. So we had to do justice to that. At start you're gonna hear everything, and later on I will just solo the Foley thing. Foley only. Time to go. Okay, I think this is really one of those non-obvious cases where you're torn between doing something in an easy way. You know how to do it, it's easy to do, but it takes so much time. This kind of tiny sound events to all animations and keeping up with iteration process of animations itself, so going back there, fixing it, moving it. it would be extremely tedious and it would take a lot of time to make it right, versus inventing some tech. But after some consideration, I figure out this would be quite easy to do, just a few blueprint nodes. Basically, on the timer, I'm checking physical angular velocity in degrees from some selected bones. I take vector and I take the biggest value, and I clamp it and pass it to fmod as a parameter. And this is how we tricked you into thinking we worked hard. Because after some time it was taken by programmer, he moved it into C++ to make it just better. Okay, another game audio classic. Time is it? Okay. So whenever you see any making of kind of video from every bigger game, you see a lot of people recording stuff here and there. It's great, but no one really tells you why they do it. At least I haven't seen a sincere answer there. And these days, it's not obvious why you record stuff. Audio libraries that you can license for really cheap money are great, and it's really hard to record something better. But their problem is they are limited, both in scope and style. Maybe you need something more. And another problem is that more and more games tend to limit themselves to a certain number of libraries. I won't mention names, but probably most of you know what I mean. And why we recorded anything for Shadow Warrior 3? This is a valid question. And sometimes we really wanted something unique. Very often we saved some time. It was very easy and fast to just go to our kitchen, find something, or go to Michał's studio, who has a great collection of props, Foley props that you can use. And my personal reason, I want to work in game audio till retirement. It's my anti-burnout policy. I feel so much better when I have some of my own material in my games. I think it's very important to me, and it helps. There's gonna be some video example. It's interesting because pandemic hit us, and at the moment it was impossible to rent some studio, go there, go crazy about props, record something. So in general, I was limited to recording in my own home with props I can find in my kitchen. This is some agricultural machine. This came later when we were able to leave our homes, which was great. Going out is great. And okay, next game audio classic, iteration. Why we iterate? And I think this is the most important thing when you want quality audio in your game. It's even more important in many cases than quality of your source material. And I believe it is possible to deliver great sounding game with average source material if you iterate a lot on it, on what's important for a project. And later in project, it's worth mentioning, it's not so important because you already have a recipe for the sounds for this game. You just know what to do to get good results quickly for your game, but especially at first parts of development, it's very, very important to put as much time as possible there. And what's interesting, it's not worth to iterate everything. I will tell you later in mysterious part called Pareto Principle. And I have a feeling that sometimes when I talk about iterating on sound, it sounds like revolution. But the fact is that most of core elements of the game are also iterated. So you're in good company here. And yeah, this is how I convince some game developers to iterate on sounds too. They also do it for other parts of the game already. And how we all approached it. Basically, when we get ourselves nice Jira task, we ask ourselves, is it short term or long term? Usually it's plain and obvious. But for example, adding placeholder to some moving event, some moving stuff on the level, or not even placeholder, but at the later stage of development, adding something to level, it's short thing. You just make a sound. Usually you know how to do it. And at the end, you just implement it and you're good to go. But good example of long-term task would be making sound for shotgun. And this came from basic intuition that some stuff is just more important than the other. Okay. What time is it? Not good. Not great. Not terrible. Mixing tech. We used FMod Studio. So there was no HDR. Which is sad. HDR is great for this kind of games. But we had to rely on snapshots, side chaining, and direction modulated attenuation. So whenever something is behind us, if it's not very important, we attenuate it heavily. We got several presets for that. And in general, we used all of those techniques very aggressively. And yeah, it turned out pretty well. Some people were surprised that we used FMod not wise with HDR. So, okay. And in general, when you go to creative aspect of mixing, solid passive mix is a must. You start with it. You set your faders where you are happy and you iterate on it. There are many. It's good to make as many mixing passes as possible. Usually it wasn't the case for Shadow Warrior, but currently when we are finishing working on Evil West, we were as an audio team gathering together in a big studio where we played the game and we moved faders. We also worked on some dynamic mixing, and our mixing goal was focused on dialogue, awesomeness of the player, and we also wanted to deliver crucial gameplay information to the player. And lessons learned here as follows. Mix scope for various things worked pretty well, and this is main reason why we were able to deliver this game to sound designers. Iteration was also great, but we are very selective about that, and we iterated heavily only on the most important things. And another key thing was we really tried to cooperate with the rest of the team. Pandemic didn't make it any easier, but we tried to set a mindset where sound is part of any key feature of the game, not just some sort of decoration that you add at the end to finished feature. So yeah, we also lost some time here, but in general it was worth it. Yeah, it was made possible by change of language, which we basically tried to get rid of techie stuff when we spoke with the rest of the dev team, and we tried to speak in words related to aesthetics, to artsy stuff. It helped. What didn't work? Too little and too limited source recording. yeah, it will be great to have to record more stuff. Pandemic missed early pre-production. I wasn't there, and in general, this is a great moment to record stuff when you just start. And the team was just small, and yeah, visibility of audio team was limited, mostly because we worked in our homes, similar to the rest of the dev team, and yeah, it didn't help. Yeah, we're gonna deal with it. Thank you, Artur. Yeah, Pareto Principle. This is interesting stuff that I wanted to share here with you. And in general, this is a famous economic theory stating that roughly 80% of consequences come from 20% of causes. And in general, it looks like many things that humans touch tend to behave this way. And in plain English, it means that in our case, some sounds will be heard much more frequently than the others. It might be not exactly 80 to 20, but it's very disproportionate. Some of things may even dominate the whole soundscape, be it weapons, monsters, things like that in our case. And basic truth is every sound should be loved, really. Every sound is important, but some sounds deserve more love than the others, especially if you have so small team. And I believe it's one of the most important things to determine what are these 20% of sounds that you need to love the most. And these are categories of sounds that we love the most. Player, so everything related to player, be it sounds of movement or weapons and magic, stuff like that. Monsters, finishers, so when you go to an enemy, when he's weakened, you kill him in a very spectacular way. And music was very important for us. You hear a lot of it. And what is love? In this case, it's about finding the right feelings. It's iterating like crazy. It's cooperating with the rest of the dev team like crazy. It's raising the scope if you see benefits. And you feel adventurous. And in general, it affects production. It takes more time. It affects design. You just make it to sound better. You design it a little differently, and it affects mix. It's just louder, more important. And these are some of the feelings that we wanted to evoke in player. Yeah? It's this. Yeah? We wanted to kick them in the face with our weapons. We wanted to feel them adventure and challenge. Yeah. We wanted to give them feeling of some old kung fu movies that we loved as a kids. And yeah, sometimes things didn't behave as expected. The game was very brutal, and we wanted to remind about it as often as possible, and with a little touch of magic on everything. Still, at the end of the day, dialogue is the king. So whatever we did, we also remembered that whatever cool thing we do, it can be still ducked by the dialogue, because it's so important, and our characters had so much cool things to say. So we were respectful for that. So, the player weapons. In general, the biggest in the scope, most complicated. We iterated them like crazy. We got something like dynamic gun firing sounds, which basically is the less ammo you have in your magazine, in other words, weapon sound changes a little as you go through your magazine. And when you're close to the end, the sound is a little different to let you know that you have some last shots. And maybe you should hide to reload or change your weapon in our case. We got dynamic gun tails, which also changed together with reverbs. We're also able to override this. Honorable mention, shotgun fire sound was iterated about 30 times until we got it right and until we were happy. And in general, weapons were the most punchy and loud sounds in the game. And funny thing is that at some point we realized that they are usually bigger even than explosions. But we're right about this. Yeah. We also have magic. And cool thing to mention here is that magic was stylized on some classic anime sounds. And movement was also very important for us, so we recorded a lot of custom source material in Michał's Foley studio. And a cool little trick was to add weapon Foley sweeteners, so sounds of handling weapons, to all big movement events like jumping, landing, and starting of slide, and things like that. And monsters are very important. They're very, very diverse, so they don't blend into one big noise. And we wanted them to cut through the mix. We focused heavily on their vocalizations, their screams, and things like that. And we did a lot of custom recordings, mostly with our voices. We also later layered this with some animals, but not always. A cool little trick that works well for us was using ultrasonic microphones like Sennheiser MKH8040 that records way above human hearing. So when you stretch it, it doesn't sound dull like something coming from behind the wall, and it's still crispy and useful. And yeah, cool cheap trick was data-driven Foley that I showed you previously. In most cases, we made a lot of iteration, but honorable mention here is Michał's Slinky Jacku vocalization. He nailed it at first attempt. It was amazing. I have no idea how he did it, but it just worked so good. We loved it. So, time for some video examples. I'm gonna first show you mentioned Slinky Jacku. Ryaku, I don't know. Okay, it's here. Sometimes you need to try. Okay, we need to go faster because time is running out. What's next? Seeking Shokera in game. Okay. So I'm gonna make a deep dive on Seeking Shokera. First, I'm gonna show how it works in game. It's these flying guys. I think that's enough for now, if we're in a hurry. And the backstory here is that this demon used to be a gong player who just went crazy and was possessed by some evil magic. So this is why he looks this way. And I'm now gonna show something about his vocalization and how we approached iteration here. This is the final result of his slaughter. Okay, so we went for this direction of mixture between creepy Santa and Nazgul. This is all my voice. For some attack sounds, we also layered some noises. These are some early versions where we searched for the right voice for this guy. My favorite. Okay, this is Seeking Shokara for you. I think I'm gonna pass on SFX sound. Okay, finishers. They were also very important for us. These are these brutal moments when you just hurt them a lot. And it ducks the whole mix. It's very surgically sculpted sounds. It's here. Okay, so this is it. And the most important sound. this is it. Okay. Music. Maciej Kulesza handled all the music. We worked together with him, and our main idea for this collaboration was to involve him as deeply as possible. We involved him also shortly after pre-production, and we basically made him part of the team. And instead of sending him strict brief to follow, we developed music style together with him. And we wanted to make the game to feel fresh and new, so we changed direction from previous Shadow Warriors, which was also great. And result is something truly unique, and I think we basically invented our own new genre. Personally, I call it Wang Wave. Our main character is named Lo Wang. So the implementation-wise, it was very linear and simple. We tried to follow the story and what's going on. And for more details, look for Maciej's lecture. Lessons learned here. It's lots of iterations on key audio features. It really helped. Close collaboration with composer was also great. And in general, we focused on all key features. And we raised a scope here and there a little, and we refocused on quality. Whether it worked, I'm not sure. In general, we are pretty happy with all the main parts of the game. So Artur is happy for the first time in his life, probably. And this is takeout for you guys. And the reason to talk more about artsy stuff comes from the bigger picture. It's not even about audio Bible. I believe that magic happens when you switch level of communication with the rest of dev team and you focus on creative, artsy, aesthetic things instead of technical, which is important but not so interesting for other people. And it opens a whole new level of involvement, and you can really, as long, of course, if the rest of the people allow you, you can develop the features together with the rest of the team. So if you start to speak their language, you can start with some truly meaningful collaboration with the rest of your team. So don't be shy about artsy stuff. Thank you. Worth mentioning, we need more audio programmers. We love them so much. And for some Q&A. If there's any left, I'm not sure.
Hello. Thank you very much for your talk. It was really awesome. Like, thanks for all the insights. You told us that it was important to you to get a lot of source material, and I'm wondering if there is like kind of ratio that you can tell that we use like 70% of our own recorded source material and 30% of SFX libraries or something like that. Like, I'm just like, I don't want exact numbers, but like, you know.
You know, it depends on category of sounds. For example, monsters were more heavy with our own custom material. Weapons, at start, we started with more library stuff, but as we went on, we started to use more of our own source materials as we gathered it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Exact numbers, I can't provide you anything.
Yeah, sure thing.
Yeah, thank you as well. Really great talk. Question I had was, when it comes to the source materials, like in terms of deciding what object do I actually record, because you could record anything, and you showed us some examples in the video. how do you decide? Like, do you just go, oh yeah, actually my fridge kind of sounds like that, or do you just experiment until something?
No, sometimes I have pure idea what to do. You know, there are some Foley, some lists of good Foley recipes, but I like to go crazy about it. Look for something that gives me fun, and if it sounds good, it's even better. But nothing like a rule here.
Thank you.
One last question.
So I have a question about the reverb in game. How do you approach it? Do you use it in combination with delay? What's the general signal flow of the reverb?
We wanted to make it as simple as possible. In general, we used algorithmical fmod event. We experimented with convolution, but we are not very happy with results, and it was performance heavy too, so we ditched that. Sometimes, in some occasions, we also bake some reverbs into assets if we know where it's gonna be used, but very cautious with that.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.